Who gets to play the violin and who gets to play the viola? It's April the 24th, 2018, and this is 508, a show about Worcester. Our panel today is Ariana, Falk, and Peter Sulski of the Worcester Chamber Music Society, Brendan Melican, and me, Mike Benedetti. Today we're talking about taxes, drugs, string instruments, the whole deal. Brent crude oil is $75 a barrel, up 4% on the week. Bitcoin is $9,300, up 18% this week. You're listening to Unity Radio, broadcasting with 100,000 milliwatts of power on 102.9 FM and streaming at worcestermag.com. The show is also cablecasted on WCCA TV 194, podcasted at pieandcoffee.org, and live streamed to our Facebook page. You can call in live at 508-471-5265. And thanks to the mighty Hank Stoltz for engineering today's show. Hi, everybody. How you all doing?
Fantastic. Another fantastic introduction, Mike.
Ariana and Peter, it's good to have you on the 508 show.
Good to be here.
We've only been doing this radio version of the show for a couple months, so we're always still trying to reinvent the wheel here, or invent the wheel here, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, we still haven't figured out the wheel. We haven't been able to reinvent it yet. It'll take a while. We're getting there, though.
That's fine.
Thanks for joining
we'll help
us.
you out as best we can.
Yeah.
Now, normally I like to start the show off by talking about the thing that I care most about, which is that week's city council agenda. But I actually am really interested in the neighborhood strings too. So maybe we can start off by talking about that.
Sure. I mean, I'll hand it over to Ariana, I think, to give us the gist of it. But it's something that I'll simply say, as a native of Worcester, really felt, and as a product of the public schools, in which we all had string programs, free string programs, that we all had access to, even if it was a group class. Free access to instruments, and that's sort of disappeared in the last 30 years.
Yeah. And
coming back into this town, for me, that was seen as a real need. And then enter Ariana, and here she came.
Well, we members of the Worcester Chamber Music Society, to us, music is such an important part of our lives, and there are sort of two parts of it. I mean, part of it was the strong belief that music really should be for everybody, that it shouldn't be something that's only for people who can afford lessons, or only for people who have a kind of background in that kind of thing, but that every child has talent and everybody should get a chance to play music. And also for us as professional musicians, music is a way for us to relate to our community and get to know people through music. So we really feel it's a two-way street. So that was kind of the philosophy we're coming from. And then we jumped right in and met a lot of community partners, people from public schools, parents, families, people who wanted their kids to be involved. And so we're now in the 6th year of running this program called Neighborhood Strings. And so basically we offer free lessons in violin, viola, and cello to kids. We've got about 50 kids involved now at 2 different program sites, Seven Hills Charter School and then Woodland Academy, which is a public school. And the program's open to kids, anybody who lives in Main South and downtown Worcester. It's not exactly a talent-based program, although it's open to those who are very motivated and love music and might think about a life in music. But to us, it's more about developing kids as people and as citizens and sharing everything we love about the arts and music through educating kids and giving them a chance to make music for free.
That's pretty awesome. I want to ask the question that I started the show off with, which is who gets the violin and who gets the viola? How do you make that decision when you have a new student coming in?
Well, it's a little funny for you to ask that, because you might not know that the viola is sort of like the butt of the jokes of the string instrument world.
Yes.
Poor Peter, who's a fabulous violist.
I can take it. It's okay. I can take it.
Well, we don't put an instrument in the kids' hands on day one, because a string instrument, as you may know, is a big responsibility. They're fragile and they're expensive, and we want the kids to respect them. So when we get, for example, a group of 8 or 10 new students in the program, they spend a few months doing all this pre-instrument stuff. Part of being a musician that doesn't involve playing music. So they do rhythm, they do singing, they learn solfege, which is a way of expressing musical signals like do, re, mi, fa, so, that stuff with their hands.
With their hands?
There are all these hand signals. This is a TV show.
Can you show us the visual part of this, what these hand signals are?
Sure.
I've never heard about this.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
She remembered.
Nice.
And the kids do a cool project where they actually make paper instruments out of cardboard, and they practice holding them, and it's kind of a project that they do together with family and with themselves, where they decorate them. So they really learn everything about like taking care of the instrument. Basically, the violin equivalent of like an egg baby before we put the instrument in their hands. And then we have a ceremony at the beginning of the school year, instrument presentation ceremony. We got to do it at Clark University this year. And all the kids came up one by one, and they kind of strutted their stuff, what they've been learning, and then they came up and took a pledge to take care of the instrument and to have fun making music, and then they got to take the instrument home after a few months. So we made kind of a little bit of a deal out of it.
So by that point in the program, kids have a definite idea of like violin or viola.
Yeah, they get a choice as much as we can. At the same time, too, you can imagine we're always looking at numbers. We want to have a decent amount of cellists, violinists, and violas. So actually, what we've done is actually, because it's easier in a group setting, which is where we start them, teaching them to stick, say, with violin. And then if there's some natural violists, we sort of switch them over time, actually.
What is it that makes a natural violist? Larger hands?
It can sometimes be that, but it can also be a personality.
The
violas,
Tell me about
Well, I was going to say the violinists would tend to be kind of like the, I mean, for lack of a better word, the divas of the music making world. They like to, you know, be playing a melody, and violists might have more of a personality to kind of integrate. Am I expressing
This is
this
good,
right?
yeah, engine room stuff. You know,
Like a bass player in a
guitarist.
rock band.
That's right. You know,
lay back a little bit.
Yeah, you get a occasional.
Clearly, the person with the viola is going to be able to figure out how to put together leather and velour, and not actually, and be able to pull it off, right? Like that's.
Well, that's open to debate.
No. I mean, it's pulling it off. That's the thing. And we make it work, and it's.
We're talking about Peter's outfit today for people who can't see at home. I feel like our lighting is still not good enough to pick up these subtleties.
And you have no idea what you're missing. It's fantastic.
A great outfit.
It's fantastic.
It is a great outfit.
I would love to,
Yeah.
just real quick, Peter, you mentioned something about the public schools, and that's, so I've got a son who's in 7th grade now, and this was something my wife and I talked about all throughout elementary school in particular for him, because we both were public school students in Worcester, and we both had the experience that you described. I mean, I had a kiln in the elementary school I went to. Like, we were learning pottery along with music, and I was a bit of a spaz, so they only let me do bongos and the xylophone, but whatever.
You got to bang something else.
I got to hit things, and that was productive. But what has actually changed? And I know the easy answer you get from educators as well. There's testing, there's the focuses elsewhere and whatnot.
Probably just 2.5.
A lot has changed, but when you look at the things that nobody ever suggests we pull out of curriculum, right? Like nobody's ever showed up and said, yeah, we just don't have time for math anymore, or like, you know, where's this reading stuff going to bring anybody? Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that as well, though, is the only time you ever see all hands on deck at an elementary school is for musical performances for students, right? That's when all the parents are there, full house. So
yeah, people love it,
and nobody shows up like to watch their kid take a math quiz.
Even though I love
right?
math,
no, I do too. I'm not knocking math. My father was a math teacher. But what actually changed culturally that like we allowed those things that personally I consider to be actually on the top of the list in terms of importance, where they just kind of slid.
Well, I think 4 people here would have 4, not different opinions, but very strong opinions on what's happened. And I'll probably go out on a limb, but having lived in a few other countries for a decent amount of my life, where in England there's a national curriculum of music, every school has to have music, every school has to teach music of some sort, of some kind, is somehow here it got pushed. I mean, I remember even taking theory at Doherty Memorial High School, music theory for 3 years, but a lot of the smarter kids wouldn't take it because it was only a general class and not an honors course.
Sure.
And yet, music, if you think about it, besides the fact that everybody listens to music of some sort, of any sort, is that it pulls together the mathematics and the poetry and so many things. It's such, but yet it's somehow been pushed aside as an entertainment. Again, I'm speaking very generally and simplistically, so forgive me. But I have a feeling it just seems to have been. I'm surrounded by committed individuals, committed people who want to see the arts happening, who believe in it, see what it does for community. Mm-hmm. Others have opinions as well. I'm sure. You can probably put it more intelligently than I can.
Well, yeah, I think you've put your finger on it. I mean, somehow it's a natural cultural thing, and I think we see it in a lot of different kinds of places. But the arts and music aren't necessarily thought of as something that are a core of what it means to be a student or to learn anymore in this country. And it's certainly we see the effects of it. And I mean, us as classical musicians, even though we love our audiences, we've got a lot of people above the age of, say, 60 at our shows. Mm-hmm. And, there's, I think a lot of that comes from just the fact that people aren't necessarily exposed to music when they're young. And so it's hard to, to find the love and the exposure when they're young.
And to contrast that, just to interrupt, and I apologize, but for instance, you spent a year in Berlin, and that when you went to see the Berlin Philharmonic.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect to see. Of course, it's something that somebody would do on a Friday night with a friend. The audience was full of people in their 20s and 30s because it was culture, arts and culture were just sort of like a part of growing up and being an interesting human being.
Yeah.
We've seemed to have lost a little bit of that.
We have, and it's. I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn here, but my wife and I used to ride our bikes down to go see the symphony at Tuckerman Hall and whatnot. It would be the youngest people in the room, and it was always a weird experience because you realize that how many people are missing out on something, one, that's fantastic, but two, missing out not because they don't want to be there, but they don't know that they should. And that's, I guess, goes back to the original question, which I didn't really expect an answer to. I mean, it's just a heady sort of, like,
No,
at some point in time, I'd love to figure that out. Like, why in America have we lost sight of the importance of the realm outside of, like, pop culture?
Yeah, when I say music, and I don't even want to even delineate, I love culture. I mean, learning the arts gives rise to whatever your fancy is. So in other words, I'm really happy to see that Palladium seems to be doing pretty well lately.
It seems like it's doing great.
Because for a while it was really in a lull.
Yep.
You know, the Hanover Theater. I'm not, like, for instance, personally, I'm not a big fan of Broadway musicals. Okay, don't shoot me. But at the same time, people love, there's a large audience for that here in Worcester. I really adore not having to go down to New York City to see high quality Broadway touring shows. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, all the different types, you know, everything else goes on. I mean, they used to be in this town incredible. I mean, I remember at El Morocco, because I grew up here, you know, I mean, there was music. Every other night you went into that restaurant, there was a jazz combo there.
Yeah.
I remember, I might be slightly wrong with it, but I just remember live music all the time in so many different places.
Oh, that was a legit jazz scene. And I mean, for both touring, traveling, and local artists, as well as fan bases as well, too.
You
I
know,
mean, I've only heard the stories from, I remember my parents telling them, though, but it was one of those venues that you could walk into and you'd be shocked to find, you know, an A-list celebrity who would just happen to be in Boston for an event, but they had to go to the El Morocco to see a jazz set.
Yeah.
I don't think people even realize
Who
that there
remembers
was
the Stones
a
at Sir
Worcester.
Morgan's Cove?
I've only seen pictures, but yeah. Blue Crickets, right? Wasn't the Blue Crickets?
It might have
I think
been.
that's what they actually played at.
Yeah.
Hank, you remember, wasn't it? Blue Crickets, right?
Crickets.
Blue Crickets. Yeah.
Thank you for
All
the
right.
correction.
Mike, where are we at?
So, I guess we have a couple more minutes, and I just want to sort of ask a little bit more about this experience of going to see the Neighborhood Strings. Do these kids end up playing shows, performances?
Yeah, the kids perform, I'd say on an average of about once a month, but 10 or 11 times during the course of the year.
Oh, wow.
Different kinds of events. Some are more formal, some are less formal. I mean, for example, all kids, about 50 kids in the program, play in Mechanics Hall as part of our big free family concert, which happens in March of every year. So we had this amazing group of 50 kids on stage. There's the opening act to the show, essentially.
This
So
is
that was
like
a big deal
this is
for
like a
them.
string orchestra.
Yeah, it's a string orchestra, exactly that. And we're supported by, we have a lot of college and high school students who come in as volunteer mentors to help us out. So it's quite a sight to see. And then they will play around town and I guess sort of social justice oriented events which kind of align with our ideas and our mission. Like, for example, just coming up in a couple days, this Saturday, they're going to be playing at the Stand Against Racism rally that the YWCA hosts down it's at the YWCA this year. And then we have a community concert series called Music on Main, which is kind of a showcase for professional musicians and students playing side by side, and our kids play on that. So for us, getting them out to play, the experience of playing in lots of different kinds of venues is part of being a musician and part of being in the program.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Do you have another question?
I think I'm seeing Hank over there get antsy. We ready to roll, Hank? Into a commercial? We'll break? All right. Well, you're listening to 508, Worcester's Libertarian Voice. We'll be back in a few.
Yes.
Love it.
We did it. We did it.
So we're still broadcasting, recording on Facebook.
Yes.
But technically, I guess we can swear now. Because we're off the radio. But yeah, just so you don't think that we're just talking amongst ourselves. There are potentially like one person paying attention right now on Facebook.
Yeah, maybe.
Hundreds. Watch. Watch that.
I want to talk about this policy stuff at some point, and I want to talk about this guy with the coyote at some point. And would you all be able to play something at some point? I don't know even if I could pick up on these mics, but we could try.
Yeah, we don't know if we can play together on our person, but
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, you should play a sweet movement, or I can do the same. I don't care. That's what I can get. That's what I can get
Sure, yeah,
out of my head quickly.
go for it. Yeah.
All right.
Did
So
you
I'm happy to do that.
make it down to see Bill Murray this week?
No.
No, it was Sunday.
I
It was
just worked too
fantastic,
hard.
but it kind of going back to what we were talking about when I told Ariel the whole conversation about what you folks are doing and started talking about education and whatnot. It was really cool to see how many young people were in that audience at the Hanover, including children who really seemed to be enjoying it. And they weren't there for comedy. They were there to listen to.
He was there with some musicians, right?
Yeah, Vogler, cello, and so New World is the tour that they're doing, and it's a combination. It's a pianist, violin player, Vogler, and then Bill Murray just reading and singing. But it's a mix of like excerpts of classic American literature, poetry, and show tunes. Seeing Bill Murray sing "I'm So Pretty," is pretty fantastic. But again, there was something special there about how excited the young folks were, and it was hard to tell whether or not it was because it was Bill Murray, and it was kind of like goofy in a way, although it was beautiful at the same time, or if it was an actual appreciation for what they were doing. But we brought our son, and he doesn't really know Bill Murray that much. He's too young to. So I mean, he's seen clips and whatnot, but I'm a terrible parent. He hasn't watched Groundhog Day. But he really dug it too. I mean, I think some of the classical music was a bit much, but
How much longer are you trying to?
that was so when the Stones came to Worcester,
we're
they didn't
gonna
play as
go
the
until,
Stones. Whatever radio
2
station it
o'clock.
was, I think it was AF at the time. They handed out tickets
We
instead
have
of
a
the blue crickets or something.
section of 8 minutes. And
Yeah,
we'll
no, no, I
policy
think,
during that
I
section,
think
and then
that's
the next
it.
section
And it was obviously people knew who it was,
Right,
but
well, 'cause
that might be a good
yeah, I
section
mean,
to start doing some
the
music.
street was
Actually, like-
filled by
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, and if you guys can just
Everyone
start
said
this,
they were-
but
Yeah,
this
let's
is
put it
very
down.
casual.
All right,
Yeah,
you
sure.
guys let me know when you're ready.
on you, Mike.
We ready? Thrill of a lifetime. Get your tickets and come in. Killers of the Amazon can devour a cow in a matter of seconds, can leave nothing but the bare bones. First time shown in your city, and you may never have the chance to see it again. Alive, 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 the deadly piranhas. $10,000 reward, if not absolutely alive. Never before shown, and you may never again have the chance to see it again. The most terrifying flesh eaters from the deep. Brendan Melican, Ariana Falk, Peter Sulski, and me, Mike Benedetti, with the technical assistance of Hank Stoltz. I think we should talk about boring, nerdy stuff for a little bit, and then
You
we'll
think
go
so?
back to talking about cool stuff like music.
All right, go ahead, Mike. What do we have?
Do you want to talk about coyotes first or the city council first?
Coyotes would be awesome.
All
We
right.
get to talk
So
about coyotes.
everybody's seen this, but we gotta represent this. This is like the greatest Telegram and Gazette front page, I'm gonna guess, of all time. Can I get the stupid camera to show it?
There it is.
It was me, my knife, and the coyote, it says. This is about a dude in Rutland who, according to this article, was messing around in his chicken coop in his backyard. He was going up and down out of his basement with an exterior door, and at some point, one of the coyotes prowling around back there, maybe just sees his head stick up and is like, I could probably eat that. Comes after him, he wrestles the coyote down, stabs the coyote 10 times with his knife, coyote runs away.
This was like an 800-pound coyote? Is that what
I don't know. Like, this is the thing, right, is that there's no independent documentation of this, but I believe this 100%.
But the chicken's okay. Chickens are all in
everybody's okay. Apparently, even the coyote's okay because it was not found by people who were searching for it. So both this dude and the coyote are badasses.
This could be a chupacabra site. This could be Worcester County's first chupacabra. I mean, if it hasn't been found, how do we know?
It was near
a coyote?
dusk, and this guy's not a biologist, so he could be mistaking a chupacabra for a coyote.
You know what I do think is interesting in being serious here, too, though? Because I do think it was 80 pounds is what he said. And I think we know humans are terrible at judging height, weight, whatever.
He said it found, Mr. Hutchins, 49 of Glenwood Road, said the animal felt like it weighed about 80 pounds. I'm going to say if a coyote attacks you, it definitely is going to feel like 80 pounds.
Yeah.
However much it weighs.
But you know what I think is kind of interesting, though, is that it's only been labeled a coyote, and it's my understanding that the majority of coyotes that we have in central Mass now are actually hybrids, or they're either referred to as coy dogs or coy wolves. And while people were kind of mocking this gentleman a lot for suggesting it was an 80-pound coyote, because a coyote would never get that big, a coy dog, it's kind of like more in striking distance, still kind of big on that side, too. But it's kind of interesting how few people, it seems, realize that we do have a lot of hybrid canines moving into the area. It seems from a breeding population of wolves up in the Nova Scotia area, and the DNA has just kind of kept moving its way through the population. And they're they are a lot more aggressive. Most coyotes, you normally would see a person and hightail it. Coy dogs are a little bit bigger. They tend to be a little bit more aggressive, which is why they are taking over the populations, and they hunt in packs.
I want to get away from all these questions about how much this thing weighed and all these skeptical, coyote truthers or whatever. Because, first of all, again, unless you're routinely attacked by different animals, which are then scientifically weighed, how do you know how much an animal weighed that attacks you? You're like, oh, that's like about an 80-pounder. That was it. That was about 75 maybe.
All he knows is that it was biting his head.
Yeah, it's the most important thing.
But the second thing is because I just feel like this is it's just such a beautiful front page. It's such a beautiful story. Everybody lives. Yeah. A dude gets to stab a coyote. It's like The Edge, kind of. Yeah. I want to read this literary essay, "I Can Kill Any Animal" by Justin Duffy, because Justin was the first person who sent this to me, this article about the coyote. And then he said, "I can kill any animal." Here's the essay. "I know what you're thinking. No, you can't, and neither can I. This attitude is a sign of an age in which we overestimate our ability to manage complex civilization problems like Facebook use and climate change, and underestimate our ability to simply kill any animal. Can I kill a shark? Yes. If you punch a shark in the nose, it will be immobilized. This is not an urban legend. Look it up on YouTube. A lion? An adult male lion sleeps 22 hours a day, so this one probably involves surprise. A donkey? My gut instinct is bludgeoning. A blue whale? Relentless harassment or massive pollution. I'm just spitballing here. I haven't done all the research, but this doesn't undermine my confidence, and it shouldn't undermine yours. Think about it this way. If I couldn't kill any animal, then why aren't we living in the kingdom of the dolphins or the cats and dogs? This is human town, baby. Every other animal has learned to live with it. We should too. If you strongly disagree with this article, pick an animal, bring it to me. I live at 144 Pleasant Street."
It's beautiful. Thank you for that, Justin. I'm going to be much less fearful of nature from here on out.
Yeah, he actually did then get one phone call from the RAC whenever they had like an injured squirrel or something available, and they were sort of like, somebody needs to put this out of its misery.
They asked Justin to come down and kill
somebody
it.
Called him up and was like, "Can you kill this squirrel?"
He hadn't thought about that one, did he? He didn't have a...
He did kill it.
Oh, he did? Yeah.
He did. He dropped a concrete block on it.
I was just going to suggest that.
Now we're going to start getting hate mail addressed to Justin for killing a squirrel.
You know what? I mean, Justin can take it.
At least we know where to forward it now.
We have about 4 minutes left, so that's enough time to cover the city council agenda, certainly, the parts that we care about at least.
Take note, City Council. You're wasting your own time.
Free dog licenses for the elderly. Catherine Hagan has a citizen petition asking the city to waive the dog license fee for people over the age of 65, when currently the fee is waived for those only over 70. Fatty Jenkins Court, a.k.a. The Cage. There was a big neighborhood meeting a couple weeks back at which it was agreed that the city should take steps to clean up and possibly even relocate the basketball court on Holly Street off Pleasant Street. This week, Councilor Rivera has the first mention I've seen of this in the public record, asking that there be a "no parking anytime" sign installed in front of the court. Raising taxes for affordable housing. I think this is basically what the entire previous radio show was about, so if we can cover this in 10 seconds, good for us. A group is asking the city to approve an extra 1.5% property tax to fund more open space, recreational land, and affordable housing. If we did this, the state would give us an extra 16%. To do this, it would have to be approved by a ballot measure, and the TNG reports it would generate like $2.5 million in extra taxes. Can you summarize this for me real quick, Brendan? Should I support this? My gut feeling is this is just like a complicated. Like I'm all about affordable housing. We should just raise taxes and put money into affordable housing.
It's actually a great idea, and it goes beyond affordable housing too. It's about putting aside cash. Well, because it's from a community perspective, we're talking about putting aside cash to be able to preserve everything from open space to endangered buildings to ensuring that we're hitting whatever metrics we choose to on the affordable housing side.
Right.
I think that the two downsides that are there that are worth looking at was when this program was started back around 2000, I believe it was, the matching dollars that would come from the state were around 100%. You're down to 16% now.
Right. So there's a lot of cities and towns around here that who did this.
And most of them jumped on early on. We just didn't. We put it off for a while. And then, I mean, it's not so much that I think it's a bad idea. We're really, at the end of the day, you're talking small dollars. But it's another tax issue. And the city handles tax issues poorly, just from a messaging and explaining to people where their dollars are actually going. And this is actually probably a great example of that. You know, the organizations that are pushing is, you know, Walter, I don't know if you caught Walter talking about it earlier. You have a large collection of organizations that are predominantly not-for-profits pushing through an issue that is going to likely slide off of them in terms of any extra costs, right? So just from an optics and messaging perspective, it probably could have been thought through a little bit better.
If there could have been more business groups who supported this.
Yeah, which they probably would if it was explained to them, because from a quality of life and a community perspective, it's totally no-brainer. All the things that we complain about on a regular basis, funding right there.
Peter, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we just fund more music in the schools with that too.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's all sorts of
Yeah,
things
why don't we
can
do that, man? We could raise property taxes by 5%. We'd have like a $10 million, $15 million annual fund for
You know,
music.
the real thing that I think comes up here that I find interesting is that the groups that are pushing this through, they're asking the council to do this as a ballot measure so they could avoid getting the signatures necessary to force it as a ballot measure.
And this is a great trend. We should definitely leap
We
on
should do this
trend.
with everything. This is the thing, right? So people have been talking about strong mayor for years. Like you always get, well, no, we can't have the council vote on that. It's too contentious. We're just going to, you have to go get the 5,000 signatures or whatever you need. Like, that's the one thing I kind of like about this, is if you're going to move forward with it, then let's just kind of keep that in the back of our heads. At any time a pressing issue comes up, don't tell your constituencies to go out and gather 5,000 signatures. Just take a vote and, you know, show us where you stand on certain issues.
When was the last time that we have to go to a commercial break? When was the last time that you remember the council putting a ballot measure on the ballot?
I actually don't know. All I could, off the top of my head, throw out is the last time we went through a charter change. Because I mean, I think that,
Back in the 80s.
I think that the last time we did a charter change, but there's got to be something between now and then. I don't remember in my voting years, going back 20 years or so, that anytime we've had a binding referendum locally. But I could be wrong.
We'll be back in just a second with 508, a show about Worcester.
And I probably am wrong. That's, yeah.
All right.
Good on you guys. I love it what you do.
Hey, do you remember?
Joe O'Brien said he thought this would be the only binding measure that he could remember.
Yeah, and he was on the charter
Yes,
originally from the
3-minute
last
commercial.
go around. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some stuff out.
And then
Big, big one.
just this is like 4 minutes. This piece.
This next, yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great. If you want to play something that's 20 minutes long, I don't care.
Oh no, that's okay.
There are 29 minutes left in the show. We can't go over that.
You guys have plenty to say though. You know.
We do need to figure out a way to talk about this here too, Mike. And
What's
should
that?
we just talk
Gary
to
Rosen's
Facebook
mail?
about this? Yeah, I mean, so anyway.
Gary Rosen left a bunch of his mail on this
So
table.
what he did was he opened up the first one, realized that they are all the same, they all have Boston postmarks. And they are all saying that retail stores in Worcester should sell flavored tobacco products because you're hurting the poor retailer.
I see.
Why are these all
So that,
these are all postmarked out of Boston because this is a bunch of carpetbaggers coming in and
I think, well, because, yeah, so I mean, so are these Worcester citizens who are concerned, or is this a group out of Boston that head of the convenience store alliance, or whatever it would be called? Yeah. Okay, here's our form letter, and he's all to sign this and send it to, if Gary Rosen got it, he figures every city councilor got it.
and nobody took the time to just take a train ride to drop in a Worcester post box.
Well, so for anyone at home on Facebook watching this and confused why I'm just flipping through letters and couldn't hear Hank, so we had there's likely to be a vote up in the city council soon as to whether or not we're going to ban flavored tobacco products for people under the age of 21 and outside of traditional.
They've done it. So you can't get it in 266 retail stores now in Worcester.
All right, and yeah, this is Gary's hate mail. So if anyone would like to come down and read this sort of awful things, non-love letters that get sent to City Councilor Gary Rosen, there's a big stack of them down here at the station.
We can open this. We could commit federal crime on
No, I'm
the
not
radio.
doing that.
And it was the Board of Health, City Council really had.
Yeah, Board of Health just
They don't
did
have to
it.
sign off on it? That's right, because in the executive board, right? So
I
they
think
can,
It's just the
okay.
Board of Health
That's the
made
thing.
the decision.
All right.
The City Council unanimously supported the said decision. but
Mhm.
it's
For what
not-
it's worth, I love flavored nicotine juice, and it keeps me from smoking. So, yeah. Sorry, Gary. I'm with these folks.
So are we ready to come back in?
20 seconds.
All right, Peter, do you want to be the intro to coming back in?
Sure.
He's going to attempt to play this through the microphone, and you can figure out if it's working or not.
So what do you want me to do?
Whatever you'd like.
So I'll give you, 10, 9,
Can
8,
we just play?
7,
Yeah.
5, 4.
This is 508, a show about Worcester. I'm Mike Benedetti. Today on the show we also have Brendan Melican, Ariana Falk, and Peter Sulski of the Worcester Chamber Music Society.
Thank you so much for that, Peter.
Pleasure.
That's beautiful.
What was that piece?
Actually, that's a cello piece, so Ariana should be playing that. But we violas steal stuff because we have the same. I'm a violist and violinist, of course, but the viola has the same strings as the cello in terms of the names of the strings, the pitches, the C, G, D, and A, going up in intervals of a fifth. We're just an octave higher. So, for instance, if Ariana had taken a cello as well and played the same piece, she would probably, it would be more sonorous, perhaps a little bit sort of less bright and quick, perhaps, not necessarily, because there's more resonance in the cello, whereas with the viola it's sort of more of a slightly higher pitched, even though it's still in the middle when you talk about the violin, which is a fifth higher even. So in a sense it's an octave, so we just play an octave higher, that's 8 notes higher, so it's like a C, but it's a C, C, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
kind of a double way.
And so the piece was.
Oh, sorry, yes. First movement of the first cello suite by J.S. Bach.
Nice work.
Just to come back to the original question.
This happens every time that I listen to somebody play a beautiful instrument. Is all I can hear is 13 years old, my piano teacher, Miss Egan, telling me how much I was going to regret quitting playing the piano. And here we are 30 years later, and yes, she was right. So,
Do you still regret it?
oh, of course, every day. Yeah, every day. How can you not? As an adult, like, you can try and pick things up, but it's not the same, right? I mean, and that's why, going back to what we were talking about originally here, the introduction as children and actually getting them to stick with it for a lifetime, I mean, game-changing in terms of both appreciation of and being able to, should the right turns come through your life, be able to stick with playing an instrument for a lifetime.
I hear you, but at the same time,
Yeah, I'm totally with you, but at the same time we have kids who are in our program sometimes for a few years, and then sometimes by no choice of their own maybe they move or they go out of town. A lot of the families we're working with just have a lot of challenges. But I think we both still believe pretty strongly that just having some music in their lives for those years still really meant something to them. They can sit there 20 years later and think about what they learned as kids, and they have a different way of listening and looking at music, and of course there's all this kind of evidence showing that it really even changes the way your brain works when you're doing music as a kid. It's like learning another language or something. So whatever little or big part it ends up playing in a kid's life or a grown-up's life, I have to believe it's beneficial.
And you just wish I could play.
yeah, but that's the thing. I would still say, I mean, we know so many adult amateurs, who put it away for 20 years and come back
Well,
to
maybe
it.
it's still in the cards.
It's still in the cards. You're still a young man.
Yeah, adult students are a lot of fun. Usually, like they can't play as fluently as kids because it's like your hands sort of stop working in the same way. But usually they really understand more and their ears are opened up. So it can be frustrating. You sort of want your body to do something and it doesn't always obey. But at the same time, you bring a whole life of knowledge and listening to what you're doing. So it's a different way of approaching learning.
There we are, Mike. I'm going back in.
Good man.
It is. Good. Congratulations. I want to talk about some of the goofier stuff on the council agenda for a couple minutes here, just to stay with this positive vibe that we now have had from this concerto. Here's an item called Bill Coleman's Giant Mosaic of the City Seal. The Economic Development Committee is interested enough in Bill Coleman's idea that we should have a giant mosaic of the City Seal behind City Hall that they'd like a report from the city administration on what it would take to make it happen.
I look forward to this report.
I'm really happy about this. I feel like there's a few people in Worcester who frequently have citizen petitions which don't always go anywhere. And I feel like of these people, I feel like Bill is definitely like my favorite and the one who I wish had the most success. And so it's good to see one of his things like go to the next level.
This is going to be big. Where are we going to put it?
Behind City Hall.
I get that part.
Someplace
It's a big
behind
area.
City Hall. There's not. I mean, people have these petitions and they're just like half a sentence or something.
That'd actually be beautiful if we could get it where the skating oval goes, and then the ice over it. To actually have the mosaic showing through the ice.
That would be awesome. Yeah, why not make that thing a mosaic? I mean, probably because it would be a maintenance and whatever else nightmare, but why not?
Now, is the Economic Development Office aware that you had and some folks had updated the city seal, and it's now made up of a collection of juggalos and
I just want
Turtle Boy? And
we should just recommend again, or we should just represent again. This is Nori Needle's re-visualization of the Worcester City seal, and
I don't know how that'll
yeah,
translate as a mosaic.
if we could have this, this would
it
be
would be nice.
This would be an easier mosaic because it would be less detail.
This is true.
Yeah. So I was talking to Nori about this the other day. He has big dreams for the city seal. We'll see what happens.
It's going places.
Are our yellow bags worse? Councilor Rosen wants to report on whether city trash bags are worse than they used to be. They're definitely different. What does our panel think? Does our panel have any knowledge of this?
Back when I was your age. No, I mean, come on.
I'm trying to. Vintage streetcars. Councilor Rose has an item asking if we could create a mile-long trolley or streetcar system. In the Telegram and Gazette article, he clarifies that this would be more about making buses look cool than actually installing train tracks.
Yeah.
But the item talks about building a streetcar system. So I don't know.
I was a little confused by that too. We've talked about this in the past. I mean, you can still go to certain areas of the city. Green Street's one that comes to mind, or at least some of the streets that abut Green Street. And the tar that makes the street is so thin, like just a little bit of kicking late at night, and you can kind of the tracks, the cobblestone, it's all just laying there. So I mean, there are a couple areas downtown where getting the light rail back together isn't completely.
We could just get a group of volunteers, put in about an hour and a half of kicking stuff, and
Yeah, I mean, that's what we used to do after the bars late at night. Waiting for a cab or whatever, just kind of stand there, kick the road, see if you can uncover a cobblestone. It always ended up backfiring, though, because eventually someone would pick up one of those cobblestones and use it as a weapon. But that was a different time, different culture. But I love the idea, though. I mean, I don't necessarily like the idea of buses that look like trolleys rolling around. That seems kind of corny, but man, if you could bring back some of the light rail, even just on a short loop downtown.
And the great thing about light rail, I mean, what I've seen in Germany and also in other places, is just the hop on, hop off mentality.
That's what I like
the
about
thing.
it.
It's quicker, it's more efficient.
And I don't know, I really don't even know what they're thinking in terms of how the service would work, but the way I like to think about it is if someone could look at a heat map of, say, what like Uber and Lyft are doing downtown, and the area from like Green Island, Kelly Square, up over to Main Street where there's some newer venues and whatnot, even if you had that one loop that, going back to, I mean, it was just before my time, I think, when we killed off the Millbury Street Shuffle, but it used to be that people would walk those distances from venue to venue, and nobody really does that anymore. Barring it coming back anytime soon, people using their feet, having some form of transportation in a group setting might be kind of cool.
Maybe.
Mike's not sold. Moving on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what are the least heavy items on here. Let's not expand the library. Councilor Rosen wants to report on how much taxpayers would save if we put the $8 million expansion and renovation of the main library on hold. I guess that this is originally started off as like a $1.5 million renovation and has kind of grown since then.
Do you want to answer that question for Councilor Rosen?
Do you know about this?
Well, I know that
I think
it's an $8.1 million project, and Gary wants to know how much the taxpayers would save.
$8 million?
$8.1 million, Gary. So, yeah, I feel like the hate mail is going to get a little bit bigger, but it's probably going to be coming from math teachers at this point.
To say why do you hate the library, Gary Rosen?
Or no, just his question seems
Say
to be,
why don't you understand how math works, Gary Rosen? What did he teach? History?
I think it was history.
Yeah, he was teaching at Doherty when I was a student.
Yeah, we got to cut him some slack.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he's so angry on that one too. That is a weird facade for that building. That it's facing the wrong direction. It would be, and he's right. I mean, there is a nice entrance on the other side, but it would be nice if it was there was also an entrance that was facing the common where the majority of foot traffic that's starting to grow downtown is.
Yeah. Well, unrelated occupants. Councilor Russell would like to know if we can let landlords with RG5 apartments apply for a special permit to allow more than 3 unrelated persons live in a unit. This sort of follows this trend of the city council trying to figure out, I guess, weird glitches in the zoning and permitting system that are making a lot of reasonably priced living arrangements illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be what this is about. I don't really know.
But it does seem different than what Councilor Bergman was talking about a couple weeks back. Right?
It is different. That was about making sure that large apartment or certain kinds of apartment buildings or certain kinds of renting out your rooms in your house didn't mean that suddenly you had to install a sprinkler system.
Okay.
And this is about, I guess maybe having, about, I don't know, letting more than 3 unrelated persons live in a unit. I mean, this is like, again, like one of these great Worcester things with like the 3 unrelated persons. Maybe it's statewide, I don't know.
I think it's just us.
These kids on their bikes, Councilor Rivera has an item asking how things are going with various groups working with the police to approach the problem of kids on bikes doing crazy stuff. I don't know how it's going.
Well, at least they weren't on 93 like they were, a couple weeks ago.
I don't know. I was talking to some bike advocates a couple months ago, and they were very concerned that the police were somehow cracking down too hard on these kids. I don't know, man. These kids just, every time I see them, they're just up to no good.
I guess it depends on how you define no good. I mean, as I too was a
Trying
child.
to crash into cars.
Well, I was a teenager once too. We did really stupid stuff
We did.
all the
We
time.
did.
Like it was a pretty consistent, like almost 24/7 sort of thing. And that included skateboards, bicycles, sometimes other people's cars the cars didn't necessarily belong to you. I mean, we didn't. I don't remember ever getting arrested.
No.
Never happened,
No.
especially for being on a bike.
I'm just happy the kids are being active. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want people being dangerous, get people
No,
getting hurt,
yeah.
but kids being active and out there. I mean, those kids are getting fit because that's the big problem right now.
Yeah, one of my
It's a super
biggest
positive
complaints
trend.
about the city for years now has been the lack of young people riding bikes. It was that was the norm, using the public bus and riding a bike were like the normal things to do in the city in the 80s, right up through the mid 90s, and there's all sorts of explanations as to why that changed. A lot of folks point to the mandated helmet laws that are in place with for kids on the young side of things now. But yeah, nobody rides bikes anymore. It seems like this is the perfect opportunity to get more heavy on the education side of things as opposed to just kind of cracking down on everyone.
I think that remains the hope that this doesn't have to be a police priority. Speaking of transit, Brendan, Councilor Rivera would like to know how things worked out with our summer 2017 program, issuing unlimited ride bus passes to people ages 8 to 24, and if it will happen again this summer.
I hope it does.
I hope it does too. I mean, I guess I'm curious to know how it worked out. Maybe it was terrible. If it was terrible, maybe we shouldn't do it again, but who knows?
Why is it 18? Do you know?
It's ages 8 to 24.
Oh, 8 to 24. Okay, perfect. I thought you said 18. My apologies.
No. So there'll be kids on the bus causing problems.
Well, yeah.
Trying to get the bus driver to crash into cars.
And I guess that's kind of the point, right? Like, there's this theme underwriting things in Worcester where it seems like we have a bad habit of treating children as though they're feral animals. Like we treat children like they're 80-pound coyotes in Rutland, and that's not normal. They're really not that scary or dangerous. The coyote might actually try and eat your head. Kids usually turn around and run away.
This reminds me, while you're talking about coyotes, either next week or 2 weeks from now, we need to do another show about knives.
Okay.
All right, we'll bring the knives out. We didn't, let these guys know, so they didn't bring
And we
any
need to do.
knives.
If anyone out there has access to a coyote, I would love to have a coyote in the. It doesn't have to be on the same day as the knife show because that could get weird.
Live coyote, or like a stuffed coyote?
No, live coyote. I think that'd be great. Well, lots of TV shows do like nature programs.
Yeah, that would be great. We got like a couple of minutes left. We could talk about Airbnb. Councilor King would like a report on how recent state legislation regarding state and local taxes on Airbnb will be implemented in Worcester. I guess now we have an official state tax regime for how Airbnb gets taxed, or an official state plan.
Sounds like fun.
You haven't been following this, have you?
A little bit. I was actually following the kerfuffle out in Boston a little bit more. Airbnb kind of went on the rampage against a relatively popular, kind of extremely popular city councilor last week, and it didn't kind of play out so well. But not making a lot of friends on the political side of the Commonwealth.
Do you think that this is why Councilor King brought this up this week, because it's been such a big deal in Boston? Or just because it's a timely thing to be reasonable to say how will this state legislation affect the city?
It's probably the latter. Yeah, going into tax season again.
Finally, we have private and public streets. I guess actually we have a couple things. We have a bunch of items on closing our community health centers. There's a report to the council on how it will go with UMass Memorial closing Plumley Village Health Services, which has something like 1,000 active patients. And Councilor King has an item asking UMass Memorial and Community Health Link to reconsider their decision to close the Children's Mental Health Facility, Birdcote Family Center.
Yeah.
People don't have opinions about this, I hope, because I want to get to one more item. Let's pretend like we don't have any opinions about it. Public and private streets. Audrey Rudenko wants the private street Gardner Terrace to be made public. and the Public Works Committee and the Planning Board recommend that the council turn down Ninonska Garcia's request for the private portion of Welcome Street to be made public. It's been a while since we saw a private street request turned down, Brendan.
Is there any details in there as why we're going to?
No, I mean, I guess you could go to the planning board hearings or whatever.
I'm busy that day, but it would be nice. I think of all streets, Welcome Street should probably be the one that's public.
I don't even know. Do you know? I
Just
don't
the
even
name
know.
only.
Yeah, so otherwise we're going to have to change the name.
This is a show where I don't do any research. I just ask Brendan these questions, so I don't have to Google things. Do you know where Welcome Street is?
No, it doesn't sound familiar, but that's
I mean, these private streets are always little tiny side streets. Yeah, I don't know. There it is. Are we ready to go to another commercial break? All right, we'll do it. 5:08, Worcester's Transit Advocacy Voice. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
You guys are hilarious. We're going to take off. We got to
All right.
work.
Thank you so much for popping in.
Yeah,
It was a
Oh,
pleasure.
yeah, pleasure. That was great. Keep doing what you do.
Yeah, well, until they throw us out, that's, yeah, like, we need a coyote in here, or we need some sort of live animal. There wouldn't be any regulations against that, would there? I know the FCC sometimes has some weird
Yeah, no, I
regs.
think whatever you guys want to do over there is
Yeah.
fine.
We'll
I'm
put up a
not,
fence.
I mean, yeah, I would just assume be fenced in that day with
Thanks
the
a lot.
coyote.
Nice
but-
to meet you.
Sure.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
Good to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Do you know anyone with a coyote?
So I finally get to meet the great thanks folks.
Okay.
No, maybe we can do. Aren't they getting the mountain lion exhibit up to speed up at the Ecotarium?
Good stuff. I didn't even know you had
We have a mountain line.
Well, we haven't been.
Well, they're bringing in a big
Yes,
cat
I mean,
exhibit up at
all local issues.
the
all
Ecotarium.
local-
Maybe we
all
can get
local
mountain
places.
lions.
You should move
That's
about
our-
quick this way.
that's our- I don't know that's what we're putting.
Want to do this
Yeah.
area?
Saving on one bag.
More the better.
Thanks.
I have a report on what we get wrong about closing the racial
You just never
wealth
know.
gap,
That's interesting.
What are we doing?
and I've got an article on
Photos out there.
the 4 problems of urban transportation and 4 separate solutions.
All right.
Which do you like more, racial wealth gap or transportation?
Whatever you think is gonna.
Gonna charge up the people at home? Oh, we're not yet. Hey all Facebook people, how's it going?
We're just kind of hanging out trying to figure out how radio works, and we're glad that you could join us for that. Coyotes and mountain lions. So we're opening it up now. It doesn't just have to be a coyote, especially if there's anyone watching who's
A
up at
large
the...
dog, a real large dog.
No, that's boring. Actually, Q has a Great Dane. Q should bring his Great Dane in and just have it sit between us for a show. I think it'd be great.
We'll put a coyote mask on it.
But no, if someone has the an inn at the Ecotarium, we can do the the mountain lions.
This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. And this is Brendan Melican looking out the window. And this is Michael Benedetti with his eyes on the ball. And this is the 508 show. Our friends from the Worcester Chamber Music Society, Ariana, Falk, and Peter Sulski, thanks for being on the show.
There's a photography happening outside. That's what I'm looking at. It looks like it could actually be interesting.
There are people who do photo shoots in this alley. We should mention that we're doing this live from our studio in a basement down a creepy alley.
It's a great
Downtown
alley.
Worcester.
And if you're in like a band and you're thinking to yourself like, hey, we need headshots and we need a band photo,
We need a brick wall to stand against.
we have the alley for you. And for a low fee, Mike Benedetti and I can show you where this alley is. And yeah, maybe we can get the dream photos. That's going to you can take your band to the next level. What else do we have, Mike?
Well, Brendan, we could talk about the 4 problems of urban transportation, or we could talk about what we get wrong with closing the racial wealth gap.
I think if we talk about the 4 problems that we have with transportation, we're going to run into an issue because we've identified at least 453 problems with transportation just within the last month.
Well, this is an interesting report that has just came out this month from the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equality called What We Get Wrong About Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. And I just want to read a couple paragraphs of this. The racial wealth gap is large and shows no signs of closing. Recent data from the Survey of Income and Public Participation, as of 2014, shows that black households hold less than 7 cents on the dollar compared to white households. The white household living near the poverty line typically has about $18,000 in wealth, while black households in similar economic straits typically have a median wealth near zero. This means in turn that many black families have a negative net worth. I feel like this is, I'm looking for the statistic on what the median wealth is overall. I feel like this is one of these things, I feel like this is like one of these framing statistics or one of these big statistics that we should talk about more. Just kind of like, we are the 99% versus 1%. So we should talk about the fact that there's like, this is a huge problem. Like we look at income frequently of people, right? Sure. We care about income a lot. We frequently don't look at household wealth, and it's such a part of the problem.
It's huge, and I think a part of it too, and we have talked about this a little bit, but yeah, I think going back to like the time that Occupy Wall Street was happening and local variants and whatnot, yeah, like talking about 99 versus 1% became sort of a refrain and a mantra for lots of folks, but the real meat of things, I think, really does lie in dicing up that 99% as well. Because, especially when you're looking for allies in any sort of movement, making sure that everybody actually understands where each other are coming from is a big part of that. And I think when a lot of folks rejected a lot of the movements that were happening about economic reform, trying to find ways to level playing fields in the United States, it did come down to so many people in this country are in completely different universes when it comes to wealth and net worth. And a lot of that tragically still falls along racial lines here in the United States.
Yeah, I just think about the opportunities that it gives you. Like, I have had successful careers in my life, and I have done crazy things for years at a time in my life. And one big factor in that is that because I come from a middle-class household, yeah, my parents have money in the bank. And worst case scenario, my parents will bail me out, or yep, my aunts and uncles will bail me out, or my cousins will bail me out, or my brother will bail me out. And there's plenty of, this is just a reminder that there's plenty of people where there's like nobody to bail them out.
Right.
When times get tough. And that just changes the decisions you make, and it changes the way changes the opportunities that you have. And I certainly understand that, like, generation to generation, there's probably some families who are going to do better than others, that even if you reset things to zero, certain families full of very smart, hardworking people won't rise to the top of the income distribution once again. That's fine. I think it's really unhealthy to have a huge number of people in society who have no money.
Right.
Like that's, or negative money. That's like really bad.
If you're the most conservative capitalist in the history of mankind, right? Like that's everything, every decision you make is based upon like strict capitalist principles. What you just said should be the most terrifying aspect of your life. There are people in the United States that have no money. So like there's absolutely nothing to pilfer from them anymore, right? Like the system is broken, if that's our system, just within what you just framed. And yeah, that's terrifying.
Well, on that terrifying note, maybe we should wrap up the show.
You don't have a solution?
I don't have a solution.
No.
I mean, there's probably some sort of form of income redistribution or wealth redistribution that would be useful, and there's probably a lot of forms that would be super damaging and bad. Yeah. And I don't have any.
Yeah.
How do I know which is which, Brendan?
Equity. It's all about equity.
Piranhas and mini pigs. That's what I'm focused on. Well, thanks to everybody for watching this show. Thank you for your feedback that you give us week to week. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for all the feedback that you're giving Counselor Rosen as well, too. Keep this up. I don't think you got enough mail this week.
People in Boston, keep sending Gary Rosen. He's doing so much cool stuff. Send him an email, send him a mail about the library. Send him a mail about Phil Coleman's giant mosaic of the city seal. There's a lot of issues to write about in Worcester. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching.